Hello everybody, welcome if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch or wherever this is being uploaded, and it's your favourite poker streamer, Fishchip Tom / Texas Tomo here, and I've been asked to a little Q&A for the fans, and so yeah, I'll jump straight into it, I guess. So question 1. Hi Tom, love the show. Thanks very much. You're one of the best poker streamers out there. Well, thanks. What do you consider a full-time poker player, and what is a good study to play ratio? Good question to whoever asked that. These are all anonymous apparently. I don't know if any names attached to any of these questions. But in terms of a full-time poker player, traditionally I mean full-time's full-time, right? But I guess there's been a sort of general assumption that 100 hours a month is sort of the minimum you want to be putting in every month to consider yourself truly full-time. I think doesn't necessarily have to be 100 hours of necessarily just playing poker, but 100 hours of general poker work, let's say, is at least a month to consider yourself at least staying sharp and up to date and relevant, if you like, for the games. In terms of what is a good study to play ratio, that's going to depend a lot, I think, on how experienced you are and a lot of your personal situation in terms of what makes a good study to play ratio. At the beginning, when you're very enthusiastic, I think it's something actually that you can utilize and play a fair amount, and you'll have the natural enthusiasm, I think, often to study on top of that and want to know more. I know when I was coming up in the game, it was something that I just wanted to play all the time and study all the time, and I think to take advantage of that, make sure you are studying appropriately to make sure that you're at least profitable in the games. I think the worst thing you can do is play too much without study, in which case you won't make money in the games, but also, of course, studying too much and never playing, you won't make money in the games. And so for a professional who's trying to maximize their revenue from poker, getting that study to play ratio right is obviously something to consider. If I was to give some arbitrary numbers, something like early on, at least making sure a third of your time that you dedicate towards poker is also studying the hands, reviewing your hands, or planning for other situations. And then as you get more accomplished, and especially if you have a good track record in a certain game at a certain stake level, you can obviously dedicate a little bit more playtime then. But I would say always keep your study, for me at least, and for the people I've worked with, making sure that at least a kind of 20% of your time, 5-1 or so, or 4-1, play to study ratio could be something good. Question 2. Hi Tom, would you do something different in your poker career than what you did in the past, and why? That's another good question. I can honestly say, and not just because Team 651 is probably somewhere in this clip or YouTube or somewhere, but I can honestly say the one thing I would do differently is get into let's say working with other people sooner. So I was very slow to get involved in any sort of stable or any sort of community or anything like that. I was always like, I'll solve everything on my own. And whilst that, I think, really helped me in terms of developing that work ethic, it for sure slowed down my progress in up the stakes and in the game. And I spent I think also from your kind of mental health, is that it's a lot more of a sociable game, right? When you're in a group with other people who are enthusiastic and want to learn. And that's for sure something I would do differently. And I think it would have, I could have saved myself a couple of years in terms of being at the high stakes 2 years earlier and made a bunch more money as well. Apart from that, I'm pretty happy, I think, with my general approach. I've always been pretty, let's say, careful. I've never overextended myself too much. I know lots of other people have had situations where their career, if you like, has been in more jeopardy because of the stakes they're playing or the bankroll they've had. I've always been a bit of a nit in terms of making sure I've had plenty of sufficient bankroll for the games I'm in. And actually, I think it's worked out great for me. So I would always encourage people to make sure I would encourage people to take a step back and realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. And yeah, that would be good. Should a question number 3? Thank you for the questions. Should a poker player invest outside of poker? And they've written money-wise, but also intellectually, like reading books about other topics. And the answer is absolutely, I would say. I think being sensible with your money and making sure that the money you earn from poker can... There was a quote, I think, from the Micros. I don't know if anyone knows this poker series I'm talking about on YouTube. Google it after this video if this is on YouTube. But the Micros, where the guy says, you grind for your money and then you let your money grind for you, which I think is a really nice and sensible approach. And to make sure that if you win, a solid amount, or if you win a big spin and go, let's say, that you don't immediately go and purchase a brand new car that will significantly depreciate and will end up being a pretty big burden in terms of your financial stuff, but actually you think sensibly about. And reading can definitely apply to that. So reading books and being well read about a whole range of subjects, I think is really useful. I know in 6 of 1 there's the monthly book club. Shout out to Jack and Scott for doing that, and a real emphasis placed on trying to expand the kind of, not just having a narrow poker scope, but trying to expand and improving other aspects of your life, let's say, as well. And question 4, what is the biggest mistake you see in low stakes poker's player games? Another good question. That's going to obviously depend. Let's try and give a broad generalization. Because I think you can even divide like low stakes between like micro stakes and low stakes. For low stakes guys, I think a lot of the guys that get stuck get a little bit trapped in terms of a certain way of approaching the game or a certain way of thinking that they're then not able to sort of expand upon. And so people often get trapped, for example, in a GTO solver trap, where it's like, that's all I need to do and then I'll be successful, and that can often be a mistake. Or people get trapped in just other ways of thinking, where it's like, I need to know the system. It's something that applied to me as well, maybe 5 years ago or something. If I could just figure out the system and apply the system, then I'll know what to do at poker. And unfortunately, I think it's a much more complicated and psychological game, and there's so many more elements to it that just trying to sort of implement a sort of machine style game or a static strategy that doesn't take into any consideration your opponents is a big mistake that I think is quite common for, let's say, the low stakes that play a lot. For the low stakes that don't play a lot, generally I think there'll be in spins mistakes in terms of on average probably playing a little bit too loose certain hands in certain situations. The button, for example, making sure the VPIP is kind of playing the correct range of hands there. Big blind versus button, recognizing the button's range advantage, and then also heads up, making sure you actually play wide enough. So I think people can often be a little bit too loose three-handed and a little bit too tight heads up, as a very general rule in terms of the ranges. And then also I think you can kind of divide poker into, let's say, playing offensive poker when you're the one dictating the action, and you're the one raising and c-betting, and it's on you to make the decisions. And there's also defensive poker when you're calling a raise and you're calling a c-bet, and it's on you defending the actions, if you like. And I think low stakes players traditionally have more room to work on their defensive poker game. This is, again, a very generalization. It's not the case for everybody, but on the whole, people get quite comfortable when they're the ones dictating the action, knowing when to c-bet, things like this. But then knowing how to respond to aggression often is, I think, one of the challenges and areas for the biggest improvement for a lot of low stakes poker players' games. Those were the 4 questions I had. I've been asked to remind any viewers that if they have any more questions, please feel free to post them, and I'll happily ramble away and give you some more answers. They've written, "Thanks, Tom. Please remind them one more time." So you're being reminded again. Feel free to comment, to post any questions you have, and we can do it. I think Jack and Scott or Wubsy or the boy Nick or any of Team 601's fantastic poker stars are being asked also to do some Q&A, so you may get some more insightful comments from them at some point in the future. But hopefully someone enjoyed that, and so shout out to the YouTubers. Hope if you're watching, you're having a good day, and best of luck. And yeah, maybe I'll see you on a Twitch stream sometime, and if so, come say hello. Thanks, guys, and I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.